artist. Today we're going to be making a snowman. We're going to sketch it, so you'll need a paper and a pencil. We're going to do it from a unique perspective or point of view, which I like to call worm's eye view. So get your things and let's get started. Okay, so artists, what we're going to do today is we're going to use a one-point perspective. You may remember that from previous art lessons where we have everything vanishing at one point. And our point where we're going to vanish is going to be up in this corner. So what I want you to do is just draw a dot up in one of the top corners of your paper. I have my paper going vertically, standing the tall way, so my snowman can be really tall. Now, by doing this snowman in the worm's eye view, like you're laying down on the ground looking up at the snowman, it gives the feeling of that the snowman is really giant, because the things that are closer to you are going to be big, which they're going to be really big because you're right next to them, and they get smaller as they go up. So it's going to be a kind of fun way to draw our snowman. So I'm going to sketch this lightly, this next line, which means I want to just do kind of a straight line, and you can get out a ruler if you want, but honestly, we're going to erase this line later, so it's super light. And it's okay that it's not perfect, because snowmen aren't going to be perfect either. And then I'm going to draw another one, and it should end over about halfway to the side of the paper. Just really lightly draw that. Now what I like to do at this point is turn my paper diagonally so the dot is sitting right above it. Now I'm going to draw mine with 3 spots to my snowman. Some people just like to show part of the snowman and then the head. Whatever works best for you. But if you think about the shapes or the forms of the snowman, you're going to be needing to draw ovals or circles, even really like a sphere. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep my sphere inside this triangle. I'm going to try to touch the side. It's a good idea to practice this with your finger. Now this first sphere or oval is going to take up most of your paper. It's going to look really big compared to the rest of it. And that's because you are laying down on the ground right next to it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a curve like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch the side of that triangle, and then I'm going to bring it in on each side. And if you go a little bit outside your circle, it's okay. So it kind of comes in on the sides. Then I'm going to draw the next one. So I start with a curve. This time, man, I want to say I can fit in 2 of my hands inside that bottom circle or sphere, just to kind of give you an idea how big it is. Now this one is going to be much smaller. So I'm going to just start with my curve first. Loosely sketch that in. Notice what I'm sketching, I'm holding my pencil way back here, and then touch the side and bring it in so you kind of see where those 2 spheres are separated. Okay, I'm going to do the same for the top, and this one's going to be really small compared to the rest. All right, do the curve first and then go back and touch on the sides. Now some people like to erase the triangle, but I'm going to do one more thing first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a top hat. Now, if you prefer to draw a stocking hat, you could do that. It's really up to you. But if you want to do the top hat with me, like Frosty, what you're going to do is you're going to start off by making the brim of the hat. So because we're looking up from the snowman, you're going to notice that it's not just a line, that it's actually like a disc that goes around the head. So it looks a little funny at first. I'm going to kind of draw lightly at first, and then when it gets how I want it, I'm going to darken that in. Now, because the triangle's there, it does look like a witch's hat, but I don't want a witch's hat. So I'm going to keep part of that, because remember, as it's going up, this part is the farthest away, so it's going to seem a little bit smaller. I'm going to draw a curve to close off the top, and now I'm going to take an eraser and erase these guidelines. So right here where the 2 spheres meet, you want to erase that. You want to do that on both sides. You don't need those anymore. So anywhere that straight line, really the only part of the straight line I'm keeping is where the hat is. So you check and make sure you can see each sphere and then brush away those crumbs. Okay, so then the next thing we can do is we can add the eyes. And when you think about the eyes of a snowman, think of it like circle if you were looking straight at them. But because we're looking up, we're going to be looking at it kind of at a funny angle. And if you look at the circle, when it's at that angle, it sort of actually looks more like an oval. So when I draw the eyes, I'm gonna draw them right here. You can make them smaller if you want to. Now, you could turn them into rocks, or if you're feeling a little cartoony like I am right now, you can make your snowman look to the side. Now, the carrot's also interesting. You're looking up at the nose, which it's not going to go sideways then. It's going to go up. So I'm going to draw, and it's go right between the eyes. Notice I started with a curve. It's okay if it's not perfect because, you know, carrots usually aren't. You can add the texture, some lines to show the texture. And I think I'm going to erase this little line right here. Okay, now before I do the mouth, I am going to add a scarf. And I want you to do the same. So the scarf would be right in here between these two spheres. So I'm just going to close off this little gap. And then I'm going to follow the curve of this sphere. Go right over the bottom of that other one. I will erase that little portion of the sphere. Now you can make those going down, but if you want to make it look like it's blowing in the wind, this might give you a place to add some different color and design. So if you're feeling creative, you can add designs, maybe some fringes on the end here. My favorite, I think, are stripes, but you could do polka dots or hearts, stars, maybe a plaid scarf. Be creative. Have fun with this part. Now I think I'll put in the mouth. Usually I just make my snowman have rocks. So I'm just going to draw that right in here. I don't know what he's looking at over there, but it's making him smile. Okay, now when I do the next part, I usually do the arms, which are made from sticks. Now if you'd rather put mittens on the end of that instead of showing the whole stick, well, this one's going behind the scarf, so I'm not drawing through the scarf. It's overlapped by the scarf. If you would like to add buttons, we have to remember the rule, and some people actually like to draw little guidelines from that dot. If you draw them really lightly, it'll be fine. And remember, if they're circles, they're going to be ovals, and they'll get a little bigger as they go down. Now you can just put a few in, like I did here, or you could keep going. That's up to you. Hey, maybe you would rather try different shapes to your buttons, but remember, you're going to be seeing them from a foreshortened angle, which means you're looking at it from the side. That's why we drew our buttons and our eyes like ovals instead of circles. All right, I'm going to add a few little more details. And once you get this done, you're going to need to get a scrap paper, put it underneath your drawing, and you're going to need a Sharpie. What we're going to do is we're going to trace over all of the pencil lines. Once I get that done, I will show you what it looks like. Okay, so I've got this all traced. The next step will be to take an eraser and erase over the entire thing. First thing you'll notice is that really cleans up your artwork, kind of gets rid of any extra pencil lines. This is one of the reasons I like to draw lightly. It makes it so much easier to erase. If you drew really darkly, you might notice that it doesn't erase fully, and there's not much you can do about that once you've drawn dark. too dark. So I'm erasing that, and that looks nice and clean. I'm gonna erase this dot too while I'm at it. Okay, so now I have my snowman. While I have this here, I'm also today, if there's time, I'm going to have you start coloring. And I am using oil pastel to color. I'm just gonna use 2 colors for now. Next time we meet, we will add more color, unless we have time today. But for sure, if we have time, I wanna start with these. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create the snow on my snowman. And what we're gonna do, I'm gonna start with this. I'm going to draw a blue line on the inside edge of my first sphere, okay? And I'm gonna do that on this middle sphere. Try to stay in the lines. Now, since I have buttons on this one, I'm going to outline that as well. Remember, oil pastels smear, so you need to be careful not to touch your drawing. Sometimes it works best if you turn it around. Now on the face, you can decide if you want to go around the eyes and the nose. You don't have to go around the mouth. What we're going to do is we're going to mix the white and the blue a little bit here. Okay, and I don't want my blue to overtake the white because we're going to color the snowman all in. And it doesn't matter if you want to start on the face or if you want to start on the bottom. I think I'll start right here on the face because it's nice and small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to purposely color over the blue. And I'm going to color also in the empty spaces. And what's happening is the blue and the white are mixing together. I'm going to color right over my marker line there. And because of that, it's making a lighter blue. This is called a tint. A tint is any color mixed with white. And so when you're making tints, you're making a lighter version of that color. All right, so I've done the face. I think I'm also, you'll notice that it gets on the oil pastel. So sometimes what I like to do is use the other end of the oil pastel to color the eyes in. Next week, what we're gonna do, once we get the snowman all colored, we'll use some different colors too. We are going to use we're going to use watercolor. So this will be a watercolor resist snowman. And I'm doing the same thing on this middle sphere. So anyway, as I was saying, with the watercolor won't stick to any place that you have oil pastel. So I'm being very careful not to get out of my lines here. I'm also trying to, because I want this to appear round, I'm trying to color in kind of a curved motion. And if you get crumbs and streaks of blue in there, don't worry about it. Just keep going. That's kind of the way it's supposed to look. I'm going to keep doing this on this side of my... It's a lot like when we did the pumpkin a few days ago. Make sure you get the whole thing colored in. Sometimes in little spaces, I like to move it in a circle. Now, if you're not sure if you're getting the whole thing colored in white, you don't want to leave any white or any places not colored in on the sphere. And sometimes it's hard to tell because you're using a white oil pastel on white paper. I do like that it's got a little bit of blue. It makes it feel very cold, like ice. One thing to check to see if you're getting it all colored in is to kind of turn it around in different lighting. Sometimes hold it up to the light. All right, now we've got a big sphere to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and do that blue line first. Kind of a little bit more than that too. I'm going to let that smear out a little bit because I really like how that blue mixes with the white here. Just makes it feel like shadows and texture a little bit on this snowman. Now, I'm going to do this edge. I haven't done any really in the middle yet, and that's okay. Now, it's important that you don't get scribbly, that you really take your time and get it completely filled in. Sometimes in this middle place, up in the middle of my sphere, this large sphere, if I have an oil pastel that doesn't have paper on it, you can take this, but you're gonna have to do it lots of times. Use the side. It really does clean up the oil pastel quite a bit. I'm gonna take this and just kind of fill that in, pushing just as hard as I would if I were doing it on the tip, but it does fill it in much quicker. And you'll have nice results, I think, when we go to paint. I couldn't do that in these small spaces on the face because I would have gotten outside of my lines. And if I get white oil pastel out here, when I go to paint over this next week, the colors will not stick to where, and it will look kind of funny. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I've colored everything. This is one that's completely done. And then I use watercolors to paint the sky. If we have time, you can also paint but use oil pastels to do your scarf, your buttons. I sometimes even take black and go over this. I did kind of the same thing with the hat that I just did with my snowman here. I did black here and then black on the sides, and then I used white to kind of blend so it looks kind of round. I kind of like that. But if you don't have time to do all of the oil pastels today, you can finish that quickly before you're painting, because the painting part doesn't take very long. What you really want to focus on, though, if you're getting to the coloring with oil pastels and the blue and the white, is to make sure you get the whole thing, all of the spheres completely filled in with oil pastel. Okay, once you're done with that today, you're going to stop, but you need to make sure your name is on the back. I like to write it last because sometimes if I write it first, it makes it hard to read. Don't forget to write your code here as well. If you forget what that is, just ask me in class and I will be glad to share that with you. So I hope you've had fun. It's a different way of looking at a snowman than you may have looked at before. And maybe when we get snow outside this year, you can try laying on the ground and looking up and see if it looks kind of like this too. So until next time, I hope you're staying creative and have an art-tastic day. Goodbye.